Resource Center. This is Said and Done, the podcast about languages and the people who speak them. Leyre Alejaldre Biel, thank you so much for joining me today. You are a lecturer in Spanish in the Latin American and Iberian Cultures Department here at Columbia, and you regularly teach Spanish classes. And today I want to ask you about a particular Spanish class that you're teaching that's at the advanced level. And so to start off, could you tell me a little bit about this class that you're teaching?
Sure. The name of this class is Afrolatinas in the US, Gender, Race, and Sociopolitical Forces in the Digital World. This is a class I created 4 years ago, and I first taught in 2023. And it was created to try to connect the language learning with a real topic that I think needs visibility nowadays. So it's a course where we learn Spanish through content. That's one of the most important things about this course. And also, this course has a big technological component because we use podcasting and social media, Instagram, to make sure that our knowledge is shared with the whole world. So it is a classroom that tries to create not a real bridge, but a hypothetical bridge to connect what we do in the classroom with what's happening in the real world.
Well, it sounds like it's a bridge in a technological sense, in the sense that you're reaching out to people on the internet, whoever might be getting podcasts or getting updates on the Instagram feed. And by the way, we'll put a link to both of those feeds in the description of this episode. So be sure to check those out. And the other way that it connects, I think, is that it connects with many real world issues that are general in the United States, but also specific to New York City. Can you talk a little bit about the content of the class? What are some of the basic ideas that this class is dealing with?
In this course, we talk about gender, race, and sociopolitical forces from the point of view of Afrolatinas in the US. We are trying to explore the concept of Afrolatina in this society and to analyze what role they have. Also, we are trying to understand how anti-racism and gender discrimination impact this group that we are trying to give visibility. We are also working on giving visibility to lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex Afrolatinas in the US to promote inclusion. And we do this by talking to Afrolatinas. We talk to them through the social media, through reading texts that are academic texts, through reading literature texts, through listening to other podcasts. We're trying to get their voices. So we talk about very important topics that are the center is the Afrolatinas and how they feel about race, gender, and their position in US society.
So a class that's dedicated to centering the Afrolatina perspective is, I would say, a relatively unique idea for a Spanish language class. What was it that caused you to think that you might want to create a class like that? And what are some of the reactions that your students have given when you proposed this class and why they might be taking it?
So when I decided to create this syllabus, this course, I had to do a lot of research. I wanted to create something unique and that was needed. And I think we are all aware of the fact that there is a big movement of decolonization of the curriculum. And that's how it all started. I realized that I needed to decolonize the language teaching and learning. As we all know, some programs position different types of Spanish in a different level. And that's due to the colonization process. So in order to decolonize the curriculum in Spanish teaching and learning, we need to position all voices in the same place. So Spanish from Cuba, from Chile, Uruguay, Paraguay, Ecuador, Spanish from New York, Spanish from Afrolatinas, that's a Spanish that has its own identity is as valid as any other Spanish. So that was one of the things that moved me to the topic Afrolatinas. Also, a couple of years ago, 4 years ago, around 2021, there was a crisis in the census in the US, trying to decide how to ask people to identify themselves racially, ethnically. It was a big movement. And they were talking about the importance to give the community the possibility to identify as Afro-Latinos. So that was another thing that triggered this topic. Then also, I'm a feminist. I'm a feminist, and I like to position women in the center of every single discussion. And having women as the center of my curriculum, I feel really, really proud of that. So those are the main reasons I created this course through this topic.
And I think another thing that your class does from what you and I have discussed is that it's also positioning real people in the center of the class. When I've taken language classes in the past, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, a lot of times it was a kind of stylized, imagined person that we discussed, usually from some sort of politically powerful center of a language and culture. And so I think what you're doing here is you're also talking about like actual people and their actual perspectives, and not just a kind of mirror of our own culture reflected back in another language. Does that seem like what you're trying to do?
Exactly. And that was one of my fears when I created this program, because I don't know all the Afrolatinas. I need to learn so much. And in this course, I'm learning from my students. They are choosing real Afrolatinas that they feel connected for any reason. Sometimes it's because they listen to their podcasts. There are other podcasters. Other times it's a politician that they admire, or it can be even their grandmothers. And that's something that I really appreciate from my students when they ask me, can I talk about my grandmother in our podcast? And I said, of course. We are investigating, researching, trying to understand identity. And identity is such a complex topic that one of the best ways to navigate what identity is talking to your roots, talking to your family. So that's something that I really like, that they are talking about real people, sometimes as close as family, or they are choosing the content of the curriculum. That's really challenging as well, as I told you before, because I don't know all of them. And secondly, because I need to, every semester, I need to research, I need to update my knowledge and offer my students a wider range of Afrolatinas that are in our society, in the US society. We focus mainly in US. There are, of course, many important Afrolatinas in many Spanish-speaking countries. And we also focus, that's very interesting, because Afrolatinas could be also from Brazil. But we also focus on Afrolatinas that speak Spanish.
Okay.
And when I say Spanish, it's not just Spanish, it can be Spanglish. It can be that they don't speak Spanish anymore, but they lived and they grew up in a context where Spanish was spoken, but for many, many reasons, they didn't acquire the language. Those are Afrolatinas as well that are considered for our course.
So some of the people that you speak with in your class, they're speaking Spanglish. They're speaking a kind of translanguaging, using both languages together, interwoven together.
Yes, and sometimes even more English than Spanish, or just English, because they didn't learn the language. And in our class, language is a concept that is not fixed, has movement. It's like water. It depends how the users decide to use the language, has one characteristics or others. And that's why I tell my students also, when you are in class, feel free to use the language in a way that you can communicate.
Yeah.
So if that means you're gonna do translanguaging, as Ofelia Garcia, one of the most important researchers of this topic, says, use translanguaging. Translanguaging is a way to communicate and is valid. So in our class, we are really flexible about how we use the language because we think that's the way we can communicate better.
And that's the way that language is spoken.
Yes.
And, you know, because of this situation of the coexistence of English and Spanish together in the US, I think you often see a linguistic repertoire that consists of both, and they're used in sort of protean ways.
Exactly. The Spanish in the United States is such an interesting phenomenon.
Yeah.
And I think that we should all be open to this powerful new production that is coming and with its own characteristics, and we should embrace it.
Sure.
Because soon the United States is going to be one of the countries with more Spanish speakers.
Exactly.
And they're going to have their Spanish that is going to be powerful, socially speaking, economically speaking. And that's another reason about my course regarding to the language. I've always thought that Spanish in the US has a negative connotation, socially speaking, due to the immigration and due to the colonization aspect that Spanish language has. No, it's a colonizing language. That's why also I said this is a I'm trying to decolonize the curriculum through this methodology and through this type of course.
So how is the class structured? You know, when you look at the syllabus, how does the class sort of progress through a sequence?
The class starts, it has 4 main blocks. The first block is about understanding what being Afrolatina means, identity, the identity, Afrolatina identity. And it's such a big topic, and there is no one answer. So every semester, that unit is one of the most exciting, challenging, and that I discover many things every semester. So we analyze from our perspective what means to be Afrolatina. We read academic papers. We read articles from newspapers. We read I love Afrolatino Forum. They have very, very interesting ideas. This is from Brooklyn, a website that they do an amazing work with Afro-Latinx community. And we build identity. Each student will create their own definition to what it means for them to be Afro-Latina. Then we start discovering voices, and that's the center. So we have 2 modules about discovering Afro-Latina voices. And the students have all the power. I will always help them, guide them with some names, but they are the ones who are going to choose the Afro-Latinas that they want the people to know through our podcast and our Instagram. And this unit, the first unit of Discovering Voices, we are trying to also reflect on why do we need to give visibility to this minorized community. Mm-hmm. And we talk in class. This is a class where we speak a lot. We write, we read, we speak, and we listen. Everything is together. But it's a class where I try to give them the emotional scaffolding to feel good when they speak in a foreign language, in a different language. I don't like the concept foreign, in an additional language. So we do a lot of talking, debating, proposing ideas, commenting on others' ideas, and that's very fluid. Then the next unit 3, we continue discovering Afrolatinas. And then the last one, I like all of them because I created the course. The last one is looking at the Afrolatinas identity in the US through their final projects. So students have to create a final project. The project can be a paper that we submit to a journal, and it will be or not published. They have to approve it. It can be a specific podcast, a new podcast. They can create videos. They have a wide variety of projects, and all the projects are around one Afrolatina, and then they give a talk in class. It's not a talk. They create an experience with the students to share that Afrolatina in an interactive way. So sometimes they play music, they make us play games, we have to talk to each other, we have role plays, we have to find words in a puzzle that are connected to the Afrolatina they chose for the final project. So that's the last topic. And then all this is materialized, and we don't keep it for ourselves. So how do we do that? We have a podcast channel, as we mentioned at the beginning, and an Instagram page. Both resources are the students are in charge to post in Instagram and to write and record the podcast episodes. So thanks to those resources, digital resources, we give the people out there the opportunity to listen to what we are learning in the classroom. And students are creating content not only for the course that a professor will read and that's it, or the classmate. They are creating content knowing that content is gonna be heard and read by real people, other people. So that's something that is really interesting in this course. And the students at the beginning, they are a little bit overwhelmed. But then when they talk about an Afrolatina, and the Afrolatina responds in the posts in Instagram, they come to class. Oh my God, Leyre, ha escrito. She replied to us. I'm like, that's amazing. That's what we want.
Yeah.
We really want to interact with real Afrolatinas, users of the language we are trying to learn in this class. So that's how it works a little bit, the course.
It seems like the students in this class have a lot of autonomy, but also a lot of maybe responsibility as well. So how do you help students to navigate that? And what happens if you have maybe like a more shy student who might feel a little nervous about going out and introducing themselves to somebody and saying, hey, I want to talk about you for this class? How do you handle that particular issue?
Sometimes that issue is, well, they are amazing, so they navigate it even before they find the problem. So what we do, they don't have to interview Afrolatinas. That's not necessary. They can research about an Afrolatina. They can read about their work in politics, for example. They can read about her roots, heritage, by gathering information from online resources. They have to document that the resources are valid. And they can always contact them through Instagram or other emailing, maybe asking them questions, but I don't force them to have direct conversation with Afrolatinas. Also, another reason is, and it's really important, being Afrolatina. What's being Afrolatina? A student told me, my grandmother is Afrolatina, but if you ask her, she says she's not Afrolatina. She says she is just Latina. And this student told me, I don't know how do I approach someone about their identity? It's such a difficult topic right now. And I said, you don't have to ask the question, are you Afrolatina or are you not Afrolatina? You can tell them you are studying this course and you'd like to talk about her experience with the Spanish language in her community. How does her family feel in her community? The characteristics they share. Do they speak Spanish in the class, in the home, or not? So it is I think it's a very complex topic, and we have to be careful. But students that are more shy, for example, if they don't want to interview, they don't have to interview. It's not something mandatory, and not many of them do the interviews. I have a couple of in the podcast, very nice interviews, and it's with roommates.
Oh, okay.
Here at Columbia.
Yeah.
So, and they were very, very good interviews with Afrolatinas in their community. So that's a possibility. And if another problem could be this, recording a podcast if you are shy. So I always tell them that the learning for me is the most important thing. If they feel too shy to record themselves, they can have another role in the recording process. So there's always space for shy students, non-shy students, Afro-Latinx, non-Afro-Latinx. This is a class for everybody. It's for people that want to learn about a group that is a minority group that needs visibilization in this country, and that we can all learn from them. And also, the most important thing, doing this using Spanish.
Sure. And it sounds like there are many, the class sounds like it's flexible, so there are different pathways that students can follow through that class.
It's very flexible. When I'm in the classroom, as I said at the beginning, I learn from my students. And the flexibility doesn't mean that anybody can do anything. No. What I mean is that they can talk to me and they can propose different paths. And together we can build a new unit, a new idea, a new strategy that I might be able to use the next semester thanks to them. So yes, it's a flexible course where it's very important to communicate in Spanish, try to speak in Spanish in the classroom, feel comfortable, and talking about a very, very important topic, I think.
You know, at the beginning of this conversation, you mentioned the census issue, that that Afrolatinas were not represented institutionally in the census necessarily. And I'm wondering if you have any reflections on what it means for you to be teaching a class like this at Columbia and centering the class on a group of people that maybe doesn't always have great institutional recognition.
It is very important to me. This situation with the census, it was, I think, 2020 or 2021. It was a huge movement about Afro-Latinx in general, not only female Afro-Latinas. And when I was reading and trying to understand what the big problem was, I discovered that when you are not visibilized in the census, you don't get certain funding, certain resources in society. So having the opportunity to teach a course like this in Colombia is giving me the opportunity to make this group more visible and to help them have access to certain spaces that before were not. They were there, but we didn't realize these women were Afro-Latinx.
Right.
So I think it's very powerful because we are positioning these women in a central role in politics, in communication, in education. They're also Afro-Latinx in Colombia, and that's another reason why I did this course before I started creating everything. And I think it was just after COVID. There was a round table.
Yeah.
They were starting with Latinx in Colombia, professors, lecturers, Latinx in Colombia, round table. And I went there. And then I think it was the next semester they did the Afro-Latinx. Not female only, but Afro-Latinx.
Yeah.
And then I went there and I listened to colleagues here saying how confused they felt about their identity, and that how sometimes they couldn't really, no, I'm not just Afro-descendant. No, I'm not just Latinx. I'm Afro-Latino, and I think this is so important to say it and to state it. So I'm very happy to be able to teach a course like this in Colombia. I think it's a great place to do it.
So I wanted to ask you a kind of technical question. And this is about, we were talking about the themes and the structure of the class, but can you talk a little bit about the sort of pedagogical reasoning that subtends your choices in the class? What kind of ideas, maybe what sort of framework or theory kind of buttresses what you're doing in this class?
So this course was designed taking into account a variety of theories, and that was what created the theoretical framework. The first theory, and that everybody knows, I think, is backward design. I had very clear at the end of the course that was giving visibility to Afro-Latinas, and then I started going backwards to decide how I was going to build this course. Then multiliteracy pedagogy is also very important in the way this course was designed and organized. Something that I think I did a little bit different than other people is using hypermedial micro writing. That is using micro text. It doesn't have to be micro writing. It can be micro texts that are going to be produced speaking orally. And I make students work with micro texts and produce micro texts to help them build self-confidence in the writing and speaking process. So, for example, asking them to write a post in Spanish in Instagram that the next day will be converted in a short little presentation in class, 3 minutes, micro, very short, but later on will be maybe one of the most important topics or center topics of the podcast. So we go to macro. From micro, we go to macro. Then content language integrated learning, that's obviously one of the center theories of this proposal. We are learning language through content. If you look at my syllabus, there is no typical concept related to teaching languages that you might find in another advanced course. Everything is through content. And when some things come up in the classroom and students decide to bring grammar terms to the classroom, they decide it. It is very rare that it's me, the one who proposes to talk about grammar. Grammar, if we use it, is to communicate as another communicative tool. So when grammar comes to the classroom, it's because a student found a difficulty to express an idea, and they told me the problem was grammar, but maybe it was not grammar. So that's when we might talk about grammar. We also use critical media literacy, and altogether is what makes this course make sense.
Yeah.
The theoretical framework. All these theories together create the foundations of this course.
Well, Leyre, I really appreciate you talking about this fascinating class, and I kind of want to take the class right now because it seems so engaging to me. Can you review for the listeners where they can find the Instagram and the podcast associated with this class?
Yes. The Instagram is at Afrolatinas in Spanish. Very easy. And the podcast is a little bit more complicated to find. It's Afrolatinas en Estados Unidos. I think we should give the
Sure, we'll put it
link
in the description.
Yeah, and also I wanted just to tell you that my students in these podcasts, in these posts in Instagram, are highlighting identity, race, gender, and language. Mm-hmm. Their posts are about this. And also that podcasting makes these very abstract topics concrete and embodied. So students don't just study about Afro-Latina voices, that's something very important. They become mediators of those voices. They give visibility to those voices through podcasting and through Instagram. So if people want to listen to the amazing products, artifacts that students have created in this group, in this class, go to Afrolatinas in Spanish for the Instagram, and Afrolatinas en Estados Unidos for the podcast in Spotify. We'll share the link. And yes.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chris, for having me here.